Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for this series of professional learning shorts on teacher tips for family communication. My name is Taya Haller and I'm a technical assistant specialist with the Learning Resource Center South at Rowan University. I taught for 13 years in a Title I middle school in South Jersey, and my educational background is in special education and intercultural studies. The overarching goal of this series is to strengthen communication between teachers and families in order to support and enhance student learning. Because we know that professional learning must be interactive and relevant for it to be meaningful, the structure of each video in this series is designed around a cycle of reflection, information, and action. There will be moments when we ask you to pause the video in order to reflect critically on your current practices and context, as well as the information presented about educational research and tech tools. We hope that these times of reflection will drive future action regarding family communication. The cyclical process of learning is commonly referred to as praxis. While there are many variations of praxis in education, the origin of most point back to Paulo Freire's definition in Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He defined praxis as the process of reflection and action upon the world in order to transform it. Freire was referring to the process by which liberation leaders must push against educational methods he referred to as the banking concept of education, in which the teacher simply deposits information into students as though they are empty containers waiting to be filled. This view dehumanizes students and sets them up to merely follow those in charge throughout their lives, which can keep people trapped in oppression. Rather, Freire asserts that apart from inquiry, apart from the praxis, individuals cannot be truly human. Knowledge emerges only through invention and reinvention, through the restless, patient, continuing, hopeful inquiry human beings pursue in the world, with and with each other. For our purposes, we hope to invite you into a process of reflection and action upon your practices and contexts, as well as the world of education as understood through research and technology, in order to transform communication with your students' families. Ideally, this is not a solitary process, but a communal one, the process of reflecting and acting together, listening to one another, and gaining new insight that leads to new reflection and new action. It is difficult to offer a truly dialogical approach through the platform of these video modules. However, there will be moments throughout when we encourage you to connect with others as part of this praxis. You may even want to use these videos as a launching point for your own professional learning community, or PLC. Toward that end, there are two resources we've developed for your use and will be referring to throughout the series. The first, which we'll use in just a few moments and will continue to use with every video, is the Communicating with Families inventory. The second resource is the professional learning guide that accompanies each video. While the slide decks will be available as well, the professional learning guides have been designed so that you can personalize your learning experience of the content using the Praxis framework. Now that you know what to expect about the structure of each video, here's a quick overview of the content in this series. We recommend starting with our First Things First Benefits and Barriers module. In it, we look at the benefits of communicating with families, which provides the rationale behind the whole series, and common barriers to effective communication, which inform the actions we suggest in other videos in order to improve family communication. After that, we invite you to engage with any of the following videos in the series, depending on your professional learning goals regarding family communication. Feel free to skip around based on what interests you the most. Leveraging your LMS explores features in common learning management systems that can streamline communication with family members and support them in monitoring their child's performance. Texting with Communication apps considers how texting can promote communication with families and equip them to support their child's learning at home, and also compares 3 popular texting apps that teachers can use. Creating a class newsletter examines the way a class newsletter can facilitate the joining process and reviews different tools and best practices teachers can use when creating a class newsletter. Facilitating Family Conferences explores how teachers can facilitate the joining process before, during, and after family-teacher conferences, and considers the practices of student-led conferences and academic parent-teacher teams. These modules are built on the foundational frameworks of family roles in their child's education and the joining process. The Foundational Frameworks video dives deeper into the educational research behind family engagement in schools and these frameworks. Whichever video modules you choose, we hope you find practical tools and resources that will strengthen your communication with families in ways that support and enhance your students' learning. The objectives of each video support that overarching goal and are aligned with the high-leverage practices identified by the Council for Exceptional Children and the Cedar Center. The Council for Exceptional Children is an international professional organization committed to the success of students with disabilities and/or gifts and talents. The CEC supports these students' education through advocacy efforts and professional development. The CEDAR Center, or the Center of Collaboration for Effective Educator Development, Accountability, and Reform, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting students with disabilities as they meet college and career-ready standards. The CEDAR Center accomplishes this through partnerships with state departments, teacher preparation programs, and school districts. Together, the CEC and CEDAR Center identified a list of 22 high-leverage practices, or the practices they considered most essential for K-12 special education teachers to master. The effectiveness of these practices is supported by evidence and research, specifically in terms of improving student learning or behavior. These practices are broadly applicable, which means they are essential for all grade levels and content areas. They are also frequently and widely used by effective educators in the classroom. Our objectives in this series are centered on the third high-leverage practice, which identifies that effective educators collaborate with families to support student learning and secure needed services. They are also aligned with a number of New Jersey's professional standards for teachers. These standards were adopted by the State Board of Education in 2014 as a means of identifying the knowledge, skills, and dispositions necessary for educators in our state. If you are a public school teacher in New Jersey, you have likely used these standards every year during the creation of your individual professional development plan, or PDP. Our objectives in this series are aligned with standards regarding learner development, learning environments, professional learning, and leadership and collaboration. You may have noticed that both the high-leverage practices and the New Jersey professional standards repeatedly refer to families rather than parents, caregivers, or guardians. We recognize that family is an inclusive term that more accurately reflects all of our students' lives and their personal support networks, and embraces grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, cousins, neighbors, friends, coaches, community organization leaders, and others who have strong ties to our students and therefore can contribute to their educational development in meaningful ways. In anticipation of your engagement with this PL Shorts, we encourage you to take a minute now to reflect using the Communicating with Families inventory. This is a tool that we will use throughout the series. Feel free to pause the video now to print or open the inventory in a PDF annotation tool. Let's take a look at part 1. For now, focus on the first column, what you do now. Take a minute to reflect on your current practices regarding family communication. What are you already doing to communicate with your students' families as a group? This would include any form of mass communication that is sent out to all of your students' families or a large group of them at once. What are you currently doing to communicate personally with your students' families? For example, this would be communication that is personalized to the individual student and their family. What are you already doing to ensure two-way communication between you and your students' families? This would be any form of communication that invites families to share their concerns, questions, and information in a back and forth manner. And lastly, what are you currently doing to promote communication with diverse families in your classroom? For example, this would be communication in which you use families' preferred language other than English, in which you support families with students of various abilities, or in which you apply culturally relevant teaching practices to engage families. Please pause this video to reflect on your current communication practices. Let's take a look at part 2. This section takes an inventory of your personal assets and needs, as well as those of your learners, their families, and your school. We'll be returning to this throughout the series, so there's no pressure to complete all of it at this time. Just jot down ideas as they come to you. Vulnerabilities. What are you worried might hinder your effectiveness in communicating with families? Strengths. What strengths do you believe will help you communicate well with families? Needs. What needs, if met, would improve your ability to communicate with families? And supports. What support is available to you in meeting those needs, or what strategies can you use to meet those needs? Please pause the video to jot down any ideas you have at this time. Thank you for joining us. Keep the Communicating with Families inventory on hand for the next PL Short in this series. We encourage you to start with first things first, benefits and barriers, and then choose based on your interest and goals for professional learning.